Welcome, everyone. I see that we have participants logging in right now. Numbers keep going up, but because we only have 30 minutes today, I'm going to go ahead and get this started so we get the most out of our time together possible. So, I want to say thank you to all of you for being here and joining us in this learning experience today. My name's Alexander, and as the CEO of Conscious Capitalism, Inc., I am just so honored to be able to support this global community of business leaders dedicated to elevating humanity through your businesses. We provide our business leaders with innovative and inspiring experiences designed to connect them with the conscious business community and provide insights and tools that will level up your operations and leadership so that collectively, the work of our community shows day in and day out that capitalism is a powerful force for good, especially when practiced consciously. Now, today is an intro to conscious capitalism session. So I'm going to actually begin with a little bit more about conscious capitalism, the philosophy. For members of the conscious capitalism community, business is practiced consciously when it follows the framework known as the four tenets. These were solidified in a book affectionately known to us as the Yellow Book of Conscious Capitalism. And today, we're going to first dive into what is in that book and what the philosophy of conscious capitalism is. And then I'm going to have the pleasure of interviewing Greg Massey, one of our board members and the CEO of First United Bank, whose story will help us take this philosophy from idea and put it into practice. So let's begin. Conscious capitalism starts from the premise that capitalism and business are good, ethical, noble, and heroic, and that there's an opportunity for us over the next 250 years in the future to live into capitalism to fulfill its incredible potential to elevate humanity by leaning into four tenets of conscious capitalism for businesses to be run on. Those being having a higher purpose, conscious culture, conscious leadership, and stakeholder orientation. Now, higher purpose is a company's why. It's elevating humanity through business, beginning with knowing why your company exists. Businesses should exist for reasons beyond just making a profit. We see profit as necessary. It's a necessary means to achieving your purpose, but it's not an end in and of itself. It is a means to something greater. Some examples from our community include Hyatt's purpose, we care for people so that they can be their best, or JB and Consulting's purpose, to help our clients and colleagues pursue their greatest potential, make a meaningful difference, and enjoy the journey. Or IGS Energy, to create a meaningful energy future together. Or our speaker's company, First United Bank, to inspire and empower others to spend life wisely. Studies show that a higher purpose can have the powerful results for a business. Gallup has found that 90% of employees in a purpose-driven company report feeling engaged versus 32% in companies without a purpose. A study at Korn Ferry Institute found that companies focused on their purpose had annual growth rates nearly 3 times the annual rate for their industry, and the evidence goes on from there. Now, the second tenet is stakeholder orientation. A business needs to create value with and for its various stakeholders to find win-win-win solutions that benefit everyone. We look at stakeholders as employees, customers, suppliers, investors, society, and the environment, but it differs for every company that may have different stakeholders and additional ones to that. In 2019, the Business Roundtable released a statement on the purpose of a corporation, which embraced this part of the philosophy wholeheartedly. In the statement, they made clear commitments to their stakeholders, including delivering value to their customers, investing in their employees, dealing fairly and ethically with their suppliers, supporting the communities they work with, and generating long-term value for shareholders, seeing all of these stakeholders as essential. The third tenet is conscious leadership. Conscious leaders understand and embrace the higher purpose of business and focus on creating value for and harmonizing the interests of their various stakeholders. They recognize the integral role of culture and purposefully cultivating that conscious culture. And leaders in conscious capitalist businesses are servant leaders who display the qualities of strength, energy, and enthusiasm, long-term orientation, flexibility, love, care, emotional, systemic, and spiritual intelligence, really going beyond just making analytically smart decisions to embodying the purpose and the values of the company in a caring manner that's fully human. And the last tenet is a conscious culture. This is the ethos, the values, principles, practices underlying the social fabric of a business, which permeates the atmosphere of that business and connects all the stakeholders to each other and to the purpose, people, and processes that comprise the company. All companies have a culture, but not all companies intentionally develop that culture to promote their values and purpose. So we see conscious cultures displaying qualities like trust, accountability, caring, transparency, integrity, loyalty, and egalitarianism. And in a Bain and Company study recently, they found that 70% of business leaders agree that culture provides the greatest source of competitive advantage. Now, that's all what conscious capitalism is. It's also important to realize what conscious capitalism is not. It's not a call to sacrifice your profits or growth for the sake of doing good. It's not the idea that you need to apologize for being in business. It's not a checklist of things to do, but rather it's a business strategy to weave into the DNA of your company. It's not a reflection of any political stance. It's not a marketing tool. It's not a form of corporate social responsibility. And it's not something that's owned by the CEO alone. Instead, it's intrinsically embraced and practiced by each member of the organization. Now, that may be a whole lot. It may sound very abstract, which is why we have Greg Massey joining us today to talk about his experience as a conscious capitalist and to make it really tangible for us. Greg is a native of Durant, Oklahoma, and the CEO of First United Bank Trust Company, an $8 billion, although more so now I just learned that this year, financial services organization operating in 62 communities throughout Oklahoma and Texas. First United delivers to over 300,000 customers through a network of community banks, mortgage offices, insurance agencies, and wealth management locations. Greg serves as a board member to Conscious Capitalism, Inc., as well as the Oklahoma State Chamber of Commerce and Imagine Durant, and is also an active member of YPO Gold and the Victory Life Church. And Greg, it's just so great to get to have this conversation with you today. Thank you so much for joining us.
Great being here. Good to see you. Thank you.
So I'm going to have a few questions to ask Greg to begin with, but we really want to answer your questions. If you're new to conscious capitalism or if you've been around for a while and have a question for Greg, please type it into the Q&A box at the bottom of your screen. We're going to get into those after we have a few preliminary questions for Greg. And so Greg, I'm going to kick it off by asking you, when did you begin to consider yourself not just a capitalist, but a conscious capitalist?
Great question. I remember joining the company in 1990. I moved back to Durant, Oklahoma, a small community bank, and we were truly conscious capitalism, capitalists before we even heard the word. And so we really cared about our community. We really cared about our employees. We considered our employees family. At that time, we had 30 employees. Today, we have 1,700, but they were just part of our family. And the reason we were in the business was really to take care of our customers and really care about their financial well-being. I remember going to my first Conscious Capitalism Summit in Austin back, 12, 13 years ago, and started hearing the terms. And for us, it was really, it enabled us to scale the organization, because when we were small, one place, one business, folks were able to hear and feel my heart, my father's heart. I joined the business with my father, and we had so much care about our other stakeholders. But using the framework of conscious capitalism, we were actually able to scale the organization and really put into words and meaning behind our purpose, our values, a stakeholder model, and really it helped us scale and enlarge the organization.
That's great. And so what does conscious leadership mean to you?
For me, the more conscious is really the more awareness we have. So when we really become more aware of our surroundings, of other people, more just aware, we become more conscious. And so you can't help as you become more aware is to you start using your heart. See, in business, so many times we just want to use our head. But if we can use our heart to guide and lead us, then we're actually able to make better decisions for all of our stakeholders. And so in our company and through our leadership programs in our company, it's all about how do we enlarge our heart? How do we enlarge our awareness? And as that awareness comes about, we become more conscious and the better leaders we have. We have in fact, we call it LEAD in our leadership program. And I can't tell you how many times new leaders in the company will go through the program, it's a year-long program, and they'll come to me and say, Greg, I don't know if I'll be a better banker, but I promise you I'm gonna be a better father, I'm gonna be a better husband, I'll be a better wife, whatever it might be. And I'm sitting there, of course, in my head going, no, they're gonna be a better leader as well.
That's inspiring. And I want to follow up and ask about what a conscious culture means to you as well.
Sure. A culture, is all about how we behave. In life, people will remember how we behave and our actions. And so we think about behaviors or our values in that way. One of the greatest things we've ever done as a company, I remember one time being down at the summit and having lunch with some other conscious leaders, and I was asking, how do you take these values, how do you get them off the wall and into your culture every day? And so we started years ago, probably, gosh, now 6, 7 years ago, but we send out a weekly letter to every employee and talking about our values. And our values, we'll actually break them down and start talking in depth with them. And we do that to allow every meeting in the company starts out talking about our purpose and values. And I'll tell you, as a leader, I thought I did it to help everybody else. But after 7, 8 years of writing these values down and actually having to talk about it and talking deeper and deeper about them, it's really molded me as a human being as well. But it really lifts those things and gets them off the wall and gets people talking about them throughout the culture. So how do we have better faith? How do we actually have our family value? How do we actually do? What does that look like internally? What about integrity? What about teamwork? So these certain values that we have as a culture, get them off the wall, get them into practice, and actually lifting the whole organization up toward those values.
I just have to say, Greg, I can see you lighting up as you're talking about this, and I feel like there's something to explain about how this is so motivating for even you as a CEO as a way to run a business.
Sure, we frame there's two things how we frame this up. We talk about love and impact, and so you talk about a conscious leader, and really, so a conscious leader actually creates more and more love for other human beings, and when you have that love in your heart, you can't help to want to have impact in their lives. And so you actually connect the conscious leadership back into your values and these behaviors, and that's how you really start having impact in the world. But it's a connection of those two things that really is the guiding star and really starts enabling your company to have more and more impact in the world. And through that impact, things just start really bubbling up for you.
That's great. So how have you experienced stakeholder orientation in your company or in your career?
It's interesting. Two things. One, let me just go back to, of course, we started out in just purely in the community bank business, and we used to say that our deposit customers wanted more of an interest rate than we can afford to pay them. Our loan customers want a lower rate than we can afford to give them. Our employees want more of a salary than we can afford to give them. And as a leader, we just got to do what's right. And so I think as a leader in any company, you're balancing these competing commitments of everybody. And we have to have a way just to balance that. Because, as a leader, I mean, I'm wanting to give the highest salary possible to every employee because we have such incredible employees, but I know I can't do that. The same thing with my customers. I want to give them the best possible deal that we can afford to give them. But they're always sometimes more than I can afford to do. And so we have, so the framework of a stakeholder tree is just that. I mean, we've got to be able to stay in business. We've got to be able to make money, and we also got to provide value to our employees and our customers. And so if we can just balance those things, when we got in this years ago, we created a stakeholder tree that symbolizes our stakeholders. And so you can actually, in that tree, we actually have roots of the tree, which is our purpose. We have, the soil around those roots, which is our values, which gives the tree life, and then the 5 heads of our primary stakeholders. And in between each one of these, in the tree, I wish I had an image of I could throw up. It actually shows the relationship between the banker and the customer, the mentor and the employee. And so you can actually create this conversation around it. But the big thing is, how do we do what's right every time there's a decision to be made with our stakeholders?
I'm just so inspired every time you answer these questions, Greg. And for everyone listening, we're about to go to questions that you're submitting, so please keep them coming in. But the last one from me, Greg, is for anyone listening who's new to conscious capitalism, what's the one thing that you really hope they take away from this today?
When you get real serious, and I'll never forget, I'm hearing Roy Spence one time speak, and you get real serious about tying your purpose to your stakeholders, to your strategy, and your leadership. When you get all that right, the impact that you can really make in the world. And so you can truly, I'm just amazed every day the stories that people come up and say, did this happen or that happen? It's so much bigger than I could have even imagined as a leader. But you're releasing humanity whenever you do this the right way. As a leader, you're really releasing it to allowing people to be who God created them to be. And so when that happens, magic starts happening inside your culture. And it's a journey though. It's we've been at this at 12 years. We sure don't have this figured out. And we got a long ways to go. We learn a little bit about this every day, but it is for other leaders, we sure invite you to be on the journey with us.
And speaking of inviting people on the journey, let's go to some questions. We got them rolling in now, Greg. Manuel has a question. How important do you consider mindfulness practice to develop consciousness in the organization's culture and in conscious leadership as well?
Sure. I always, the way I grew up in prayer is completely different than I see it today. And so, there's got to be a way for all of us to quieten our mind down. So practice a meditation or silencing prayer, and allowing your mind to slow down and be able to listen at a deeper level. And so that's part of that awareness I talked about before. To have awareness, you've got to slow your mind down and to be listening to what the world's trying to tell you.
Thank you. And we have a very different question, but a great one from an anonymous attendee. What are the unique difficulties of instilling conscious capitalism into a company in the financial sphere, which has many barriers of entry for some folks and a lot of restrictions? And how does that impact or change your approach?
It's interesting. I've had so many people say, it's so unique for us to be a conscious business, being in the financial service business. I remember one day I was at the summit, sitting at a table, and these 2 reporters were there from the Wall Street Journal. A few weeks later, I'm in the Wall Street Journal, and because we thought financial wellness was an important thing, being the bank, and I'm thinking, what bank doesn't think that? So maybe I think it's too easy, but it really is, and so we. Part of our Spend Life Wisely, how do we allow people to make great financial decisions, and how can we help them on their journey to goodness over a long period of time? And so we don't think there's that much difference. I always say if you become a conscious leader and you really create that awareness of what the world really needs, I always say purpose, is this connectivity between, what's the gift that God's given you to be, and that gift could be what the gift that your company has been given, and then what are you passionate about? And then this third thing is what's the needs of the world? And this interconnection of those three things actually gives you your purpose. And when you find that, there's nothing that's going to stop
Hmm. So, so Devin has a question, really trying to understand conscious leadership, and wants to know if you draw any distinction between conscious leadership and servant leadership, another common word out there.
I really see them as the same thing, right? Because conscious, whenever you become more aware, you're wanting to serve others. We're here to serve God and serve other people. And so that's what servant leadership is becoming more conscious. So they're really, to me, they're kind of, twined around this little bit of the same tree.
Hmm. Jeff wants to know what do you do with difficult conversations with employees, say those who are underperforming, given your culture and the family-like orientation of it?
Man, great question. We have a leader, any new leaders that come into the company, we have orientation. And so our value is love and impact. And so I always tell our leaders is that, I hope if you come in here with a fear orientation, so you do this or X, I hope the culture kicks you out, because a real leader does it through love. And just like my children, if they misbehave, I still love them, but I'm still going to correct them, but I'm going to correct them in the right way. I'm not going to do it through fear, but I'm going to do it through love. And so why should we have that same practice in the workplace by elevating humanity by a way of love and doing it for the right reason? And so all it does is it's harder work, because you got to frame the conversation in a way and connect with that person in a way that actually moves them forward in life. And so I think it's really just the right way of leadership, and that's why you create cultures. And that's some of the stuff, Alexander, you said, some of the quotes you had of businesses, why these cultures are moving businesses so much faster. This year we've grown our organization over 30% this year, and during COVID, and it's amazing, because of that culture that's created. You're doing things out of love. People actually start performing in a better way, and your retention goes way up that way as well.
Hmm. So, one of the things I said in my introduction is that conscious capitalism is not corporate social responsibility. And Stephen wants to know if you could describe the difference between conscious capitalism and CSR.
It's interesting. I was on a phone call the other day with a friend of mine, and he sees them the same thing. And to me, there's so much difference. Conscious capitalism is doing what's right, right? So sometimes the CSR folks are just doing it because they got to do it because of the public demand of doing it. And versus, if you're conscious capitalism, you're doing it because of the awareness the world needs it. And there's just, to me, a little bit of difference, because some of that CSR stuff, to me at least, is just, it's almost like a check mark, right? And it is interesting how that can sway the way which you doing it. And so there is somewhat of a connectivity, but the connectivity is coming from a place of why you're doing it versus how you're doing it.
Hmm. And I would also actually add to that, Greg, if I can, that
Sure.
one of the differences is CSR is something that seems to be tacked on to a business at the end. It's writing a check, it's making up for all the wrongs a business did in its productive process. And conscious capitalism says we want businesses to create so much value for all their stakeholders, the win-win-win strategy, that you don't need to make up for anything afterwards. It's done everything great and given to society just in its normal operations.
That's a great way to frame that. Love that.
So Laura actually wants to know, what's the most challenging aspect of conscious capitalism for you? What are some obstacles you've encountered and overcome with this?
You know, Probably the one that it was the question before that. So we reframed our values as love and impact, and because people want it sometimes in the culture. So faith and family integrity is part of our, what I call our love part of the organization. But there's also this thing called high performance. And so sometimes, people say, well, you can't, I don't have to perform in your company because of, I want to be treated like family, and I don't have to perform. And we're like, no, 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 no. We're here to actually work and strive and do things in the world and make this world a better place. And we got to show up and lean into our work every day. So I always, we used to say it's the two sides of the coin. And so when you really find love and consciousness, you can't help but want to have impact. But there's certain folks that want to hide behind the values in the wrong direction. So you got to be able to kind of shine that mirror on both sides of the coin to allow that. Allow them to happen. The same thing with the impact or high performance. So you have these high performers that just go, 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 go. I'm going to perform no matter what, and it doesn't matter how I do my job because I'm performing at such a high level. You're like, no, you got to do it in a loving way. So that it's balancing both sides of it, and both sides are very important.
We've got so many good questions here. And Robin has a question. How do you overcome pushback that she finds when you talk about spiritual intelligence as a component of conscious leadership? Is it vocabulary? Is it something else? Or maybe also just what does that mean to you?
What does it mean what was the first part of that?
The spiritual intelligence component of conscious leadership as one of the many types of intelligences.
Sure. Faith is part of our culture, part of our guiding principles, and so we really say just how do you love God and love others, and so to me it goes back to a little bit of the how do you center yourself and centering prayer, but through those things you're going to just automatically grow your spiritual intelligence, and as that spiritual intelligence goes up, the love of other folks kind of starts, manifesting itself through the culture.
And if I can add, First United Bank has a strong faith religious component to it, but that's not necessary for conscious capitalism. Lots of conscious capitalist companies don't have that, but this concept of spiritual intelligence really is about embodying the purpose and values of the company and living that out through your actions and your being, and that being your spirit as an individual as well.
Yeah, I always say we like the faith pillar, but we try to keep religion out of the bank. It just we can just focus on God and others, and I always say loving God's easy, loving others sometimes difficult, and so if we can just focus on loving everybody in the way that God created them and love them the best way we can really create a pretty unique culture.
So I think Kim is excited about this and wants to share conscious capitalism with more people, and is wondering, to what extent does First United work to introduce conscious capitalism to other community leaders and businesses?
Sure. The local chapter network is really important. We helped start the chapter in Oklahoma City, involved, of course, in the Dallas chapter and Austin chapter. But I think the biggest thing we're doing right now that I'm so excited about is we just started Spend Life Wisely Academy, and through that academy, we are introducing conscious capitalism to business leaders in every community we're in. We just started it this last year. We've had our first class in Durant, Oklahoma. We got our second class going right now in Sherman, Texas. Early next year, we have McKinney, Texas, Denton, Texas, and I believe Frisco that will be starting. So through that, we're actually not only teaching conscious capitalism, but also just how do you scale your business? How do you actually create conscious leadership? How do you actually create purpose inside of your company? How do you feel? How do you actually identify stakeholders? So very excited about it. And we're finding, and our belief is, by the way, if we could create, the 20 top companies in every community we're in, and if we can really create conscious businesses that are healing organizations inside that community, we will change those communities forever. And so we believe over the next 10 years, we can actually change every community First United is in through creating healing organizations throughout that community. And you think about the amount of hours every person in business stays, at work versus at home. Creating that culture, it will just multiply in the communities, and we're already seeing the change in the few people that we've been able to do this with so far.
So we're almost out of time, but I've got one more question that both Christopher and Toby seem to be asking at the same time, which is, do you ever get pushback when you talk about love and mindfulness from stakeholders? And how do you introduce conscious capitalism into the culture of an organization when there might be skeptics in there?
You know, I can remember some of the things when we started down this highway. Our values was done internally, and I'll never forget. We spent a year talking to our each one of our employees, and they came back and said, "Greg, here's our values," and faith was one of them. And my father used to end every meeting, so we're always put God first, our family second, and our work third. And that's where that faith value came from of years of him ending our annual meetings with that quote. But I was worried, like, man, if putting this out here and putting love out there, what how will this happen? And both internally and externally. And all I can tell you is every day by putting that out there, we have been awarded, rewarded, and very little pushback. So it's been a blessing to be able to just be a leader in this company that created it and just uh, having the courage to move it forward.
Greg, thank you so much for giving us your time and just being such an amazing conscious capitalist leader. It's really been a pleasure. And
Thank you, thank
I
you.
want to thank
Appreciate all
everyone.
appreciate all you're doing to make conscious capitalism a movement. You're really moving this thing along, and anything that we can do to support you in your efforts, Alexander, we appreciate what you've done. So thank you, sir.
Thank you. And the same thanks goes to everyone on Conscious Capitalism staff that's making this possible. Amanda, Abby, Michael here on the call, and everyone else, and to everyone joining us today. Sorry we weren't able to get to every question, but we want to answer your questions. We want to help you understand conscious capitalism. So write in and ask us, and we want to help you on this journey. Hope you have a great rest of your day, and happy Thanksgiving.